Hello, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the tip off. Thanks so much for tuning in. All right, for those of you that ragged on me on YouTube that my place was too messy, it's relatively clean. Like the grand chair only has a few papers on it. That, by the way, is a great picture of me and my father skiing powder. He likes to refer to it as half his age because at the time of the photo, he was half my age. For those of you that are on those of you who are on the podcast version, that was really stupid for you. All right, hope you're well. A bunch of things to talk about today. For those of you that are soccer fans, I did not watch. I know Bagley and Gerard did and seemed to be pretty engaged on the CONCACAF, I guess, match one or however you call it. So congratulations to Real Salt Lake. It sounds like they did really well, represented the sport well, represented MLS well. But as I've said before, I got enough other stuff, and that's not a sport that I have engaged in yet. My kids both play it, but I'm not buying it's the future. We'll see. I've heard it's the future since I was a kid, so I'm not. But I don't want to. I don't want. This is not a day to dismiss that. It's great. It's obviously good for Salt Lake. Anytime one of our teams does well, so good to see. In regards to last night of the NBA playoffs, I kind of have a vibe, and this might be a little bit of a stretch, but I kind of have a vibe that may be the last Hornets win and maybe even last Grizzlies win we see. San Antonio's offensive ball movement is so special. I mean, that game was a brawl, and if you were down low, you were getting beaten, and the Spurs just kept upping the ante with their ball movement. It's so fabulous to watch them be able to play at that level. It's something that really every team should emulate along the way because they just truly they move the ball. They have such a fabulous level of understanding where each other are. If you watch them, they so fundamentally play for the corner three and place guys there that everyone knows how to find everyone. Their floor spacing must be drilled at them with such a level of detail because they are so rarely poorly spaced. The Jazz this year, so often we had two guys almost standing in the exact same place at the same time. And the Spurs are so contrasting to that in their ability to do things. And then Oklahoma City just blasted Denver. Oklahoma City does look very good. My wife looked at me and she said, "Are you just going to puke if they go to the finals?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's going to be tough to swallow if possibly they make the finals." But they look very good. The Kendrick Perkins trade was good to them. And they got some things other than Durant or Westbrook early in that game last night, which allows them to be a much better team than otherwise. A few things on the web for you today. We're getting closer and closer to the NFL draft. Mike Lombardi, who does a really nice job, I'm sure a lot of you hear him on Bill Simmons stuff, also did a nice piece today on the Patriots draft day and how they do things, and he obviously spent a lot of time with Bill Belichick, particularly back in his Cleveland days, and so some interesting pieces to look at in that regard. I find this NFL draft is going to be really, really interesting in regards to the quarterbacks over the long term. I was talking with Scotty G on our show about this, and the Achilles Smith NFL draft is the one that really this reminds me a lot about. And I think that maybe we've learned a little bit since then. But that was the draft, if you recall, of Tim Couch and Achilles Smith, Dante Culpepper, Donovan McNabb. There were so many different elements in where the mobile quarterback fit in and what kind of skill sets you're looking for out of a quarterback in that draft. And Couch was the traditional, but he really wasn't because he was from a Hal Mummy system, and we later discovered that system doesn't actually parlay to creating NFL quarterbacks. I see this draft similar to that in a lot of ways. The one area where I think it's going to be different for this upcoming NFL draft is I don't think we're going to have the same run on quarterbacks. That quarterback draft had, 1, 3, 4. I think people have realized that if your quarterback isn't just insanely ready, then he's not going to be able to contribute a great deal early. And we've just seen so many people stretch to try to get that extra quarterback. And I think that excuse me, I think that's something that we'll see just a little bit more reluctancy from some of these general managers to be able to pull the trigger on quarterback. I mean, whether it's Jake Locker or Gabbert or one of these other guys, it's clear to me. Gabbert, by the way, was in Denver to meet with Elway recently, which is an interesting situation, Cam Newton, all the rest of those circumstances. I think it'll be very interesting to see who pulls the trigger where in the NFL on those sense of the NFL draft. The schedule came out. I have to say, with the NFL labor situation, I find that one a little hard to get excited for or dig into or anything of that sort. So we will see how this all plays out. Carolina sounds more and more like they're going to take Cam Newton number one. Then does Denver? If Denver does go quarterback two, then we really do suddenly have the same run on quarterbacks that we had in that draft with Couch and Achilles Smith and a bunch of busts and a bunch of other guys that came through that you weren't anticipating. That was also a historic draft because I think more African American quarterbacks were drafted than white quarterbacks in the early rounds. That was one of the first times that had ever happened. And I got to tell you what, I like Kaepernick out of Nevada. I talked about that with Scotty recently. Kaepernick is a guy who I would keep an eye on. Another very interesting piece, Sam Amick, who's now writing for Sports Illustrated. We're huge Sam Amick fans. And he wrote the piece about the relocation. But what jumps out about it is this following comment. By comparison, the Kings' current deal with Comcast, time of their TV deal, is worth $11 million annually, not much more than the league low $9 million annually from Charlotte. The Clippers currently get $22 million annually, although are in renegotiations because of the team's increased relevance. So even the Clippers get $10 million more revenue every year than the Kings or the Bobcats. The Lakers' new deal is $200 million. When the Lakers are suddenly making $190 million more per year simply on TV revenue than other teams in the league, we've got a serious, serious problem in this league. So we'll see. That's why you have to have some significant revenue sharing going into this league coming up. All right, final thing I wanted to discuss today, which I think is the most interesting debate. And this, for those of you that are social network people, this got really hot. I got killed. I'm aware of it when it happens. I got just murdered on some websites for this. People were really, really, really fired up about this. And this was at the beginning of the year, if you remember correctly. The beginning of the year, there was the rumors that the Jazz were going to trade and be a part of the Carmelo sweepstakes. And we're going to trade Andrei Kirilenko in part of the deal to Denver. And the Jazz were going to receive Boris Diaw instead. And let me tell you, people were beside themselves about this. And I got called every name in the book. I thought some of it was disturbingly unfair, from my opinion. Not that I don't forget these things. But what really bothered me the most on this was that I was being called a homer and a salesman and all these things, which wasn't true. The debate and the discussion that went on, which I thought was a very interesting debate and discussion, was, are you better off getting a player that played 64 games or a player that plays 82 games? Boris Diaw has continually shown the ability to play without injury. He's overweight, he does this, he does that, and Kirilenko is the opposite. He impacts games greatly when he plays. There was no question in anyone's mind, at least in my mind, in any debate that went on in this discussion, if any of you listened clearly, yes, I'm still a little bitter, that I thought Andrei Kirilenko was a better player than Boris Diaw. But the question that had to be asked was, is Boris Diaw at 82 games a year a better player than Andrei Kirilenko at 60 games a year? Now, interestingly, their numbers are identical. Kirilenko averaged 11.7 points a game. Diaw averages 11.3. Both averaged 5.1 rebounds. They're virtually the exact same on the offensive glass. Boris Diaw got 4.1 assists to Kirilenko's 3.0. Block shots, Kirilenko gets 1.2 to just Diaw's 0.6, and Kirilenko gets a few more steals. Their shooting percentages from three were almost identical. Boris is a little better inside. And the question I go back to, at the beginning of the year, had that trade been made, where there would have been an incredible outrage from the fan base. The Jazz are tanking. They would have saved a tremendous amount of money. There was no question on that as part of the deal as well. Tremendous amount. Maybe 11 or 12 million on the deal. Would the Jazz have been a better team? And I think the Jazz had a lot of holes this year. That's how you become the team they did. But one of the things that I think is interesting in this debate is, again, the idea of 82 games versus 64. And then there's some argument that Boris Diaw's ability to play some true power forward could have covered up the Jazz problems when Memo didn't come back early in the year. But that's a discussion that I think it's a very interesting one to revisit. And as the Jazz rebuild the franchise and rebuild the team, it's a very high-level debate. Now, there's just no question that Kirilenko is a better defensive player. We talked about that he's one of the top 5 according to 82games.com and what he's able to do defensively this year. When he was on the floor and off the floor, the Jazz were actually almost identical, which was very surprising. But generally, he seems to guard his man, mark down on his guy, and Diaw does not do that. Diaw this year, Charlotte, as has always been the case this year, allowed about 2 more points per 48 minutes when he was on the floor than off. So again, there's no debate question. Kirilenko is a better player than Boris Diaw. He brings more to the table. But had the Jazz made that deal and had Diaw healthy for 82 games compared to Kirilenko for 64, which would have been better off for the franchise? Now, part 2 of this discussion you can get into is then Darren probably would have never been traded because Carmelo would have already gone to New Jersey and this and that, and Derek Favors would have already been moved. And then Derek Favors, by the way, would be on Denver, and I wouldn't like that. I like Derek Favors on our team a lot more. So just a little debate out there. You guys can go discuss. Would you rather have and I've asked Kevin O'Connor this question a few times. On a scale of 1 to 10, would you rather have a player that's a 7 for 60 games or a 5 for 82 games? And O'Connor has usually, when I've asked that question, sided on the idea of having a player for 82 games. All right, have a good one. We'll talk with you. I'm on with live at Groove Satellite today, so I'll try to get you some good satellite deals from Groove, and we'll talk to you soon. Matt Harpering podcast probably being recorded at some point here shortly, so stay tuned for that. Bye, YouTube people. Hope you're well. Anything you want me to show you? Here's my memory of the. You see up there? Can you see right here? See there, the kids. They're in Sonics gear. That's my memory and tribute to the Sonics right there. And hope you're good. Oh, we're a little tilted. Come back to the middle. Bye, guys.